Tractate Bava Metzia, page 83, at the Mishnah, beginning a new chapter, chapter 7. I would like to share with you a translation from a very beautiful book. It's called Mishpetei HaTorah. One man had learned for several years in Israel before returning here to America. When he decided to purchase Sfarim, books, for his library, he had a brilliant idea. Why not call a regular Sfarim store in Eretz Israel? At that time, Sfarim in Eretz Israel cost half a price of what they did here in America. So he was sure that it was worth it, no matter how much the shipping will cost. So he called the shop owner and made his order, paying for everything, including the shipping, by credit card. When the Sfarim finally arrived, he was overjoyed until he studied the invoice. He noticed that the price seemed inexplicably high. Although they were not as expensive as Sfarim here in America, they were considerably more costly than the price in Israel. So he called the shopkeeper to complain, but the seller claimed that he had done no wrong. He said, "Of course it cost more. You live in America, where Sfarim cost double. I charge all customers in the United States much more than I do who shop here in Israel." "But that can't be right," protests the purchaser. "It is forbidden to overcharge due to a ona'ah. How do you justify overcharging me?" So the guy disagreed. He said, "You called me from America, so why can't I charge American prices? I gave you a huge discount that you would have been hard-pressed to find over there, including shipping. It cost only 8% what it would have been had you bought locally. What Sfarim store give you such a great deal?" Well, when this question was presented to Rav Tzvi Spitz, the rabbi that wrote this book, Mishpetei HaTorah, he ruled, and I quote, "Since the storekeeper is in Israel, and that is where the business was conducted, it is forbidden to charge more than the local prices. Therefore, the merchant must return the extra money to his customer, or he can give back all the money and send the Sfarim back." This is clear from the Yerushalmi in Perek HaSocheret HaPoalim, Halacha Achat, first Halacha. The Mishnah there states that if one hired day workers but did not discuss details of the arrangement, so we follow the local custom in such matters. So the Yerushalmi also brought by the Nimukei Yosef, and in the Rema in Choshen Mishpat, chapter 331, rules that they're about a person who live in Tiberias, in Tveria, where they would work shorter hours than Beit Meon for the same daily wage. One man who lived in Tiberias brought workers from Beit Meon to his hometown to do a regular job for him. Towards the end of the day, the workers insisted that they could stop. That's their local custom in Tiberias. Their employer insisted that this was not fair. "Why do you think I went to Beit Meon to get workers instead of just hiring locals? It is self-evident that I wanted you to work like the custom in your city. The same is true in our case. Since they did not discuss the rate of the merchant initially, the buyer is in the right. Since he went out of his way to order from Eretz Israel, it should have been obvious that he meant to purchase farim at the local price. That's Mishpatei Torah in Bava Metzia, Siman 63. So the Rivash also have a discussion over that. When you have you hire employees, or you make any type of ma'aseh kinyan, any type of acquisition, if that's chal b'dibur bilvad, if that occurred just by having a discussions, or you have to have more than that, ma'aseh kinyan, and total act of transactions. Example, Reuven said to Shimon, go and use your connections to get me a job, and I'll pay you for that $1,000. So, lichura, it's appeared, the Rivash said, that you have ma'aseh kinyan just by the dibur, by the just speaking. Anyway, we are page 83 at the Mishnah. Hasocher et hapo'alim. One who hired people to work for him. In general, when you are employer, you are hiring people to work for you, you can make any condition you like to make, as long as they agree with that. That's the way Tosfot explained. They have to work by this condition. So the Mishnah basically speaks about situation that one hired employee without specification, without telling them clearly what exactly the going rate. Tosfot said here, im itna me'ikara akol efitnao, if it was a precondition in advance, that's it. Here, when it's not clear, because hasocher et hapo'alim v'amar lahem le'ashkim u'le'ariv, one hired people to work for him, and he said to them, you know, I have a need for you to be here early in the morning, and to stay later. So later, meaning the next page, you see what exactly the local customs, right? But the idea is, he told them that is extra hours than usual. מקום שנהגו שלא להשכים ושלא להריב, אינו רשאי לחופן. So if they live in a place that the tradition, the custom is not to, so it's like you go to some cities, it's not a secret, you go around Home Depot, right, Gilbert? Mm-hmm. So you see all these people waiting for a job, right? Yeah. So there are some cities, they go to places and they're waiting there very early in the morning. There are some places before, before 8 o'clock, you don't see them. So obviously, the Gemarrah later on elaborates why we need to say that, but it said, makom shenahagu lazun yazun, lesapek bemtika yesapek, hakol keminhag hamedina. So basically, it's all depend upon the local customs. If they have this tradition to give them lunch or to give them meals, so you have to do it. If they give them, provide them sweet foods or refreshment, the Meiri said, you have to give them something that is equivalent. But the rule is, in general, it's all depend upon the regional custom, and that's the way you should do it. Now is a story, and we have a derivative from this story. מעשה ברבי יוחנן בן מתיה, שאמר לבנו, צא סחור לנו פועלים. It was a rabbi by the name of Rabbi Yochanan ben Matya. So he said to his son, go out and hire people, hire labor to work for us. הלך ופסק להם מזונות. So he went and he hired them and pledged to provide them a sustenance in terms of their employment, but it wasn't specification of the details. וכשבא אצל אביו, אמר לו בני, when he returned to his father, the father was unhappy with that. So he said to his son, אפילו אם אתה עושה להם כסעודת שלמה בשחלתו. So the Gemarrah in Gittin 68 said that Shlomo, the end of his life, it was different, but in general, Shlomo HaMelech, because it was a great wealth at that time, so they give a huge feast. So even in that language of exaggeration, you prepare a feast for them like that of King Solomon in his time. He said, "Lo yatzata yedei chovatcha imahem, shehem bnei Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov." You will not fulfill your obligation because they are descendants of our forefather, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So therefore, you have to give more. Basically, the way the Gemarrah said later on page 86, that in Avraham Avinu it was even for more than King Solomon. Anyway, the great machnise orchim, great hospitality. אלא עד שלא יתחילו במלאכה, as long as they did not start doing their job, you can back out, you can change. And said, צא ואמור להם, על מנת שאין לכם עליי אלא פת וקטנית בלבד. The condition is that you only expect to have a meal of bread and legumes, which is the typical meal given to laborers. So basically, the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Mattia, he need to do that before the laborers start their job, because otherwise he can basically change the condition, change the תנאי. רבן שמעון בן גמליאל אומר, לא היה צריך לומר, he doesn't need to state this condition, because the principle is that הכל כמנהג המדינה, everything depends upon the local customs. Meaning, even according to the way that he agreed with them, which is a regular mezonot, a regular manner of food, he needs to give them according to what people in that city pay or give to the employees. You don't need to go extraordinary, you just give them, for example, if other employers in the areas give them lunch, you give them lunch, etc. Now, the first stage here, the Gemarrah, dealing with the first ruling in the Mishnah, that if someone hired a laborer, he cannot impose on them to work more than the regular local custom. So the issue here, the Gemarrah said pshita. So that's very obvious. Why? Because if it wasn't a clear condition, a clear statement that made by both parties, when exactly, what is the expectation? I remember I was once at the one of those rabbinic conventions. It was those years that I used to go to many of those conventions. They asked me to speak. I was, those years, I'm talking specifically when I was a rabbi for 5 years in New Jersey. So one of the rabbanim complained that he was teaching about mitzvahs, and it was always something the parents complained, always problems. And he said, I gave my heart and soul, I worked very hard. I taught to the bar mitzvah boy at least once, twice a week. So I said to him, here is my suggestion, not just to you, but all the other rabbanim, especially the young colleagues that just finished Yeshiva University or Yeshiva Chaim Berlin or other places. I said, you have to write down and say it and reinforce the expectations in advance. When I, in my almost 20 years in rabbinate, right, 15 years in the city and 5 years in New Jersey, with all those so many bnei mitzvot, I always sat with the parents in advance and show them a page of general expectations. This is exactly what is going to happen, and have the parent, one of them, sign, and the boy sign, and me sign, and have a copy for me and copy for them, and explain clearly. It was also in my previous show, we have a bar mitzvah guide, like a booklet. And the key idea is, any time, if there were any complaint, I have zero complaints since that. And I believe strongly the reason is because you set up a clear expectations. And that applies also to business or relationship or other things. If the expectations is very clear in advance, the way the Chafetz Chaim instructed us, then you don't have issues. Here we're dealing with a laborer, right? So they come to do work, they have certain expectation of payment, certain expectation of food, and then they have grievance and they have complaint, etc., etc. If you hire them and you not condition with them what exactly the hours, and now all of a sudden you tell them you're expecting to work early in the morning, late in the evening, etc., so you go by the local customs. So they said, Lo tzricha, the Gemara said, the reason we needed the tafa lehu a'agaryu. That at the very beginning he was extra sporty, he was extra large, so he adds more money to their labor, which means he basically make a deal with them that he's going to pay them more than the usual. Mahu de tema, you may say, amar lehu, that he can say to them, haditfai lehu a'agraihu, the fact that I add more money to your labor, to your wages, ada'ata dim kadmitu umechashchithu ba'adai. I have in my mind the reason I pay you more than the usual wages, more than the usual hours, it's because I'm expecting you to come earlier to work and you work later. Usually it's a type of work that you are scheduled by time, you're restricted by time. For example, if you're working for HUD, you're working for a city, you're working for half government, you're working for a non-profit, you're working to a specific business people. So you have a restricted time frame. So therefore you make a deal with those specialists or those employees that I know this is the local customs, I'm paying you more and I'm expecting you to work early in the morning and late in the evening. Kamash Melan, so therefore the Mishnah come and teach us the Amhulei, that they said to him, Hai di tafatlan aadata de avdinalach avideta shapirta. The fact that you increase our wages was with the understanding that we would perform quality work for you, not that we work longer hours. So the dynamic, the discussion here is really the quality of work or the hours schedule. So here the Gemara, so the idea is, the Meiri explained that if the finished job by outside evaluation is basically equal to all the other type of work, other employees, there are those, the Meiri said, who hold that the owner, the one who rent them, can reduce some of their salary. There are those who say that he cannot do it because they do according to their ability and they do their best, and that's basically most of the opinion. But now the Gemara brings a special ruling in regards to a daily worker. Amar Reish Lakish, page 83b, Poel biknisato mishelo bitziato mishel ba'al habayit. So he says, when you have employee, laborers, that entrance to the city from the field at the end of the day's work is basically he needs to pay work until the very end of the day before returning home, and he is not paid for his travel time. However, in contrast, his departure to work is at his employer expenses, which means he travel after sunrise, which is the time that he is paid for. Because they said, the concept Tosfot explained is they the time of labor is from the sunrise to the sunset, the time that you see the 3 stars. Since the purpose of labor to go to work is like Tehillim 104, the purpose of the employee to go to work is for the owner, so it's proper to say that that's incorporated as part of the owner's expenses. So therefore the labor comes when the sun rises, but when he's about to leave to his house, it's for the labor's needs, so it's not considered part of that, and it needs to work until the sunset. שנאמר, that's the 104 in the book of Psalm, תזרח השמש יאספון ואל מעונותם ירבצון, יצא אדם לפעולו ולעבודתו עדי ערב. The sun rises, they slink away and couch in the dens. Man goes forth to his work and to his labor until the evening. So the idea is that people set out to work only from sunrise, but they work until the very end of the day. Excuse me. Several halachot I would like to share with you. First one is from the Shulchan Aruch, Choshen Mishpat, chapter 331. One who hires laborers and wants them to come to work earlier or stay later than is regular accepted, he cannot compel them to do so, even if he pays them more than the standard rate. So he may establish, and that's also the Rambam in Ilchot Schirut chapter 9, he may establish that extension of working hours as an explicit condition of employment at the time of their hiring. And that's the Harav Chaim rules, that always before you start something, you make the expectations in a very clear way, preferably in writing, so people have no complaint. It's all clearly, lucidly stated in advance. Now, it's also said in Shulchan Aruch, in a case where one hires laborers without specifying their conditions of employment, if they are in a local which has standard practices, the employer may not deviate from those practices. Similarly, regional practices are followed with regard to laborers' right to sustenance. So basically that followed the view of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel in the Mishnah. And as he said, that the Rambam also in Ilchot Schirut, in Sefer Mishpatim Ilchot Schirut, expanded. Now, in a city, I'm just reading from the translation, current translation of the Shulchan Aruch Choshen Mishpat 331. In a city that does not have an accepted practice with regard to laborers, or in a case where one hired laborers with the explicit condition that they have the status of laborers by Torah law, and that's the Rema, he said the laborers must leave their homes at sunrise and continue working until nightfall. On Shabbat Eve, they may leave work earlier so that they have sufficient time to prepare for Shabbat. That's obviously, we said many times that that's crucial to do it earlier. Rav Ovadia Yosef, may rest in peace, in his book, Chazon Ovadia, he elaborates on importance to take time before Shabbat and not to enter the dangers of a violation of Shabbat. So therefore it has to be earlier time. So the Gemara asks a question, what's the reason that you have to set up the hours? They said, Velechzei heichei nehigei. So the whole idea of employment, the way that it's practices, has to be in the regional custom, in the local custom. How can a source by cities, so the idea is, You just go the way that the Mishnah describes. You go by the local, regional people's custom, and you follow that customs, that local. So when exactly Reish Lakish meant when he said it? So the Gemara said, Be'ir Chadasha. You have a new development, a new city, is no established set of customs, so therefore it's total open. So the Gemara said, V'nechezei meheicha ka'atu. So that's basically the idea the Ran said in Chidushei Aran. All right, it's a new city, but let's see from where they are coming from. In general, the rule is in every new city, when it's a total fresh and unknown, you go by the Minhagim Nimukei Yosef too said, by the original way they did it. So they said, Binekuta A. Here you're talking like the land of immigrant. The Ritva explained it, that it happens when people travels either for war or for poverty or other reasons. People travel from one location to another, and therefore you can have a land of immigrants. You have a city that collected many customs. It doesn't have the established one. So therefore, there are those who have a different minhagim, a different regional customs. There are those who walk earlier, there are those who walk late, and therefore you can just go by the Torah law, and that's what Reish Lakish meant when he said it. Another option to understand it is the Ibait Eima, another way, the Amar Lehu, that the owner said to the laborers lucidly, the Agritu li kefoel deoraita. I want you to work for me as the original precept of the Torah law, which means, by this explanation, Reish Lakish is dealing by the halachot that follow the Torah law, and the idea is, in the Torah, you don't have a clear cut of frame time for each employees. So therefore, the Ritva explained that the Gemara meant this pasuk and Tehillim, we said in Rosh Chodesh 104, that we derive from that, that's basically the setup time for work. Now, the Gemara now goes to all these different psukim and stories that is derivative from that that ruling. דרש רבי זרע באמרי לה תנא רב יוסף. מהי דכתיב תשת חושך ויהי לילה בו תרמוס כל חייתו יער? What exactly the pasuk that King David stated? תשת חושך, Almighty, you make darkness, and it's night, in which all the beasts of the forest creep forth. So he said, תשת חושך ויהי לילה, זה העולם הזה, שהוא דומה ללילה. This applies in a way of allegorical way or metaphorical way. When you speak about darkness, it's this world. Because in a dark situation, the person cannot see what's coming further. So it's basically, the Maharal explained it, that's called He'edera Metziut, the absent of the light. So, since the essence in Judaism is not this world is the paving, the transit to the afterlife, the world to come. So therefore, the wicked are basically considering in this world, because they are nothing when it's come to the real afterlife, versus Olam Haba, the world to come, but that's the real truth. That's basically similar to the day that's everything is clear. That's the Mesilat Yesharim in chapter 3 expanded on that. As a side note, I just want for some people who are more in the science, you should know that the Sufism, the study of Sufism in Islam study, it's all based on this Judaism teaching. The whole idea of the transiency, the temporality of this world, and the importance of the afterlife. You can see it in the teaching of the Khatif, you can see it a lot in the teaching of the Muhammad al-Ghazali, the Alchemy of Happiness. You can see it a lot. It's based, obviously, of Rabbeinu Bachya ibn Pakuda, the duty of the heart. But you can see it also in the teaching of Rumi, Abu Arabi, and many others teachers of the Sufism that is based on what our Talmud, which proceed much earlier than Sufism, the idea of the temporality of this world, and the whole idea of leading to the afterlife, that's the core, the purpose of life. בוא תרמוס כל חייתו יער, אלו רשעים שבו, שדומים לחיה שביער. As we said, that's applied to wicked people. They sometimes live in a life that people even jealous of them. They see a fancy home, fancy car, fancy lives, have fun all their life, but basically the way King David resembled that, he said, those wicked are resemble a beast of the forest, because they have a great influence in this world, but eventually they are wicked. The pasuk continue, תזרח השמש יאספון, ואל מעונותם ירבצון. When it's come to the world to come, and again, this is a language of a euphemism, simile, something like very, very metaphoric, but carries a lot, resonate a lot of truth. He says that the sun rises, they slink away and couch in their dens. תזרח השמש לצדיקים, the sun rise for the righteous, and they said, but that's obviously the world to come. יאספון רשעים לגיהינום. This apply when the forest creep forth, that's applied to wicked people when they receive the punishment in the Gehinnom, lucidly hell, right? ואל מעונותם ירבצון. So when they use the term and they couch on the dens, so he said, you will not have a single righteous person who will not have his own residence in the world to come. אין לך כל צדיק וצדיק שאין לו מדור לפי כבודו. So the Rashash explains that because they use the word me'onatam, which is a plural, it means that each and every righteous person has his own madriga, mador, special place. יצא אדם לפעולו, man goes forth to his work, יצאו צדיקים לקבל שכרם. This is the time, which is the afterlife. As the Rambam tells us, what is the Olam Haba? Olam Haba is, he said, that the understanding of God without the body limitations. Tzadikim yoshvim, the righteous people sit, ve'atrotehem beroshehem, and the beauty of their learning Torah is on the top of their heads. And the whole idea, the Rambam explained, that's the reward, the highest reward of understanding God and knowledge of God. That's the highest joy of the spiritual part of the Nefesh Elokit within the person. ולעבודתו עדי ערב, במי שהשלים עבודתו עדי ערב. That's so beautiful and so deep. They said, and to his labor until the evening, that's referring to one who has completed his labor by the evening, which means before the evening of his lifetime, which is his death. And that's what the Rambam tells us a lot. He said, a person should always, the act of teshuvah, the real teshuvah, is a feeling, today is my last day. So since today is my last day, I need to prepare myself. As part of the faith of Emunah is I need to set before the Almighty tomorrow and give an account for my life. And obviously I did many wrongs, but since this is my last chance, which is today, I need to do a special preparation so I have something to say when it's come to the moment of reviewing my life and judgment. So therefore, someone who has completed his labor in advance, and that's, by the way, it's a lot of the Hasidic writings, that one of the prayer one should made is the very end of his life, that he should remain with the level of faith that he was when he was in a full conscience. Because there are many stories you can hear from Chevra Kadisha, from people who are standing around the deathbed. They're saying Nishma, they're saying Shema, they're saying things with the person who is about to depart from this world. And all of a sudden, person that was a good person all his life starts talking, God forbid, against God, against things. And you amaze what exactly happened to that soul. So that's the idea. The Yoni Yaakov said that a person can destroy all the labor of his life if things like that happen at the very end. So therefore, the Yad Yosef explained, based on the Gemarrah in Kiddushin, page 40, that if a person at the end of his life regretted, and he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I was religious person all my life, I'm sorry for that," etc., then it's basically an issue of all of his faith. The Maharsha said the opposite. If someone was bad all his life and he reached the end and he recognized that there is God and he regret and he have feeling of teshuvah, there is a chance for him to get some acceptance of repentance by the afterlife. But this is the serious derivative in the midrashic way to those beautiful psukim in Tehillim. Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon ashkach le'ahu par ha-gavna dekastafis gavni. So he knows a officer that connected to the government, to the king, that he was specialized in criminals, in thieves, investigating thieves, and he was basically severely punished those thieves. Amar lei, Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon asked that fellow a question, Heiche yachalt lehu. How do you know all the tricks for those thieves? All the things that they have remembered. This is before those electronics machines that you hook to a person's, before the surveillance systems, right? This is a person just uses talents to do the right interrogations and get. So he said, Lav kechevaita metilei. It's not people like in animals, dichtiv, because they said this pasuk, bo tirmos kol chayto yar. So those people behave like animals, those thieves, they're basically hiding. And how in the world you'll be able to catch them? Another option, understanding this pasuk, they said, Ikade amrei ma'ikra ka'amarli. There are those who say that he derived from different pasuk in Tehillim, chapter 10, Ye'erov bamistar ke'aryeh besuko. He said that they he lies in wait in a secret place as a lion in his lair. He lies in wait to catch the poor. He catches the poor when he draws him up in the net. So since the wicked are so devious, he said, Dilma shakal tzadikei v'shavakt reshi'ei. Maybe you apprehend the righteous and leave the wicked alone. So Amar lei, the officer said to him, Umaya aved har mena de malkau. I have to come back with a report. You know, it's like people who are standing and try to give you a ticket. So they know they cannot come back to the stations without people they get tickets. Otherwise they feel that the officer or the people in charge, they don't feel that they do the job. So sometimes by the end of the days they couldn't catch anybody, so they try to find someone regardless. Why? Because they have to come back with some result. Amar, Rabbi Elazar said to him, Ta agmerach heiche ta'aved. Let me teach you the way you should do that. Ul be'arba sha'ei lechanuta. You should go to the store at the 4th hour of the day, this is the time in those days, the Gemara in Shabbat, page 10 said, in those days people used to take the break. How do you say it in nowadays? Like lunch break. So you go to a place that people usually sit and eat. כי חזית איניש דקשתי חמרה וכנקית כסה בידי וכמנמנם. You see someone who's drinking a lot of wine and he's holding the cup and he's almost napping, right? So, שאול אילווה. Start asking some background of this guy, right? עיצובה מרבנן הוא וניים. If he's a Torah scholar, usually young Torah scholar, the Gemara in Tanit 4 said, and he's just napping, right? So, kadumei kadim legirse. So he most probably arose earlier to sit and study, like we are doing Daf Yomi early in the morning. So there now he's just tired and he's kind of napping, right? Ipoelhu. But if this guy is working like a regular employee per day, per hour, per day, kadim ka'aved avidete. He most probably came earlier to his work. Ve'i avidete beleila. But if they said that he's an expert that working at night, and he suspected because at night he didn't hear a noise from his house. So, wait. Radude radid. So, you shall, he draws a copper wires, which is a form of labor that does not produce noise. And that's what Unkelus said on Shmot 39. The Pasuk said, "Vayrak'u et pachei hazahav veradidu." Ve'ilo, but if he's not none of all of these, ganavahu v'tafsei. So assume that this guy is a thief, and you shall arrest him. It can be assumed that he was awake the previous night. Guess why? Because he was stealing. And that is why he is now dozing off. Right? That's the advice he gave him. So he said, Ishtama milta bei malka. So at the advice, the counsel of Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon was heard in the king's palace. So when he heard that, oy! So right away, Amru karyana de igarta Ihu leheve parvanka. So they said, let the reader of this letter be its messenger, which means since Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, offered this advice, he should be the one to implement it. So Atyua le Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. So they appointed him to be a thieves catcher, because he came with such a brilliant advice. And they forced him to do the job. He proceeded to arrest thieves. That was his new job. So Rabbi Elazar's friends rebuke him. Shalach lo Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha. Shalach le Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha sent him forth a word of admonition, and he said, Chometz ben yain, ad matai ata moser amor shel Elokeinu lahariga. He said, you are wicked in comparison to your father, the righteous Rabbi Shimon, just as vinegar is spoiled wine. Until when will you inform of the nation of our God to be sentenced to execution by those idol worshipper in the king's court? Shalach lei, Rabbi Elazar responded and said, Kotzim ani mechale min hakerem. He said, I am merely eradicating thorns from the vineyard, which means I'm removing the wicked from the Jewish people, which is like you go to a place there's a lot of roses, you see the thorns, you pull them out, so you see a beautiful roses with no thorns. Shalach le yavo ba'al hakerem b'chalet kotzav. Rabbi Shimon Kocha says, why it's your job? Let the owner of the vineyard, which is obviously God, he himself should pull out the wicked from the nation. It's not your job to do it. So the question, the Rashba, you see that question many others ask, how really Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon did it? He takes people and send them to punishment. We know that Gazlan, the robber, don't deserve execution. And furthermore, you need to go by the rabbinic court, you need to have witnesses. So the Rashba and also the Rivash explains that there are some exceptions, that there are some situations that the sages of that generation can go and punish people even the way that was not written in the Torah, when is such a level of crime in that generation, so many wickedness, so many thrones, so many people that destroy from inside the nation, that therefore they can do it, especially if the king give them this right. And because at that time there was such a level of thieves, there was no other choice. But again, the Choshen Mishpat in Shin Peichet said that one who does that in general doesn't have a share in the world to come, so that's the reason why he was rebuked. But again, as we said, Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, is one of the luminary of the luminaries, so we only understand in our level, but obviously he knows what he's doing. Now the Gemara continues and said, Yom Achad Pagabe Hahu Koves. So one day he saw a person who was basically do laundry. Karyei Chometz ben Yain. He called him vinegar, son of wine, because again his father was a great Rabbi Shimon, and he considered him as a vinegar. Amar midechatziv kulei shma min hareshiahu. Since this person is so obnoxious, so rude, right, and the way he speaks to me, it means that he is a wicked person. Amar lu tfasu tfasu. He told the authorities, arrest him, and they arrest him and condemn him to death. So again, there is a discussion among the rabbis why he did it, how he did it. Anyway, levatar denach da'atei. After his mind settled, when his anger abated, Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, regretted his hasty decision. Azal batre lefaruke velo matzei. He went after this laundryman in order to ransom him and save him from execution. Kara alei, and he said this famous pasuk from Proverbs, chapter 21, Shomer piv ulshono, Shomer mitzarot nafsho. Whoever keeps his mouth and his tongue, keep his soul from troubles. Which means, had this laundryman not issues his derogatory comment, he would have been spread this fate. So he said, Zkafuhu, they hang this laundryman. Kamtute zekifa vekabachi. So Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, he stood beneath the gallows and wept. Amulei Rabbi, they said to him, our teacher, Al yeira be'einecha, let it not be bad in your eyes that you caused the death. Why? Now they told him that shehu uvno that he and his son both engaged in intercourse with betrothed young women on Yom Kippur. שהוא ובנו בעלו נערה מאורסה ביום כיפור. So the Gemarrah in Sanhedrin 84, they explain what exactly is a violation of Tashmish Amitad, one of our 5 Isurim on Yom Kippur, but the Maharsha and Yaakov expanded of what exactly happened and why basically that fellow deserved it. But the Choshen Mishpat in 388 said it is prohibited to inform on a Jewish person to those idol worshippers, authorities, with regard to both criminal and monetary matter, even if he is a wicked and sinful individual. Anyone who informs on a Jewish person has no share in the world to come. That's also the Rambam and Ilchot Chovel Umazik, chapter 8. Hiniach yado al bnei me'av, so he placed his hand on either his belly or the Gemarrah in Brachot 61, the Yoni Yaakov said it, that he put it on his heart, and he meant to say that is an inner feeling. Amar sisu bnei me'ai sisu. He said, rejoice, my innards rejoice. Why? He says, umas feikot shelachem kach vada'it shelachem al chamat chava v'chama. If your mere suspicions are so accurate, all the more so your certainty must be correct. If the condemnation of this man based upon the suspicion raised by the insolent proven to be correct, the identification of thieves is follow a logical reasoning must certainly be accurate. So he said to them, שלכם על אחת כמה וכמה מובטח אני בכם, שאין רימה ותולעה שולחת בכם. So I assure you, it's like talk to himself, to my innards, that worm and maggots, that's part of what they punish after life, will not affect you, which is a sign of a completely righteous person. So they said, Vafilu Achei, but nevertheless, with all said and done, that it was proved his righteousness in total way. Lo miyatva da'atei. So it's still, his mind was not calm. So that's the idea of the righteous person. Rabbi Tzadok HaKohen explained it in Takanat HaShavim. You see also in Rashi, in Bereshit, chapter 15, the first pasuk, that the righteous people, when even they bring like you see the story of Abraham and Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Even they see the wicked get punished, they still have this type of self-search and feeling weak or uncomfortable with doing such a thing. So Ashkuyu Sama de Shinta, so they give him some medicine like something sedative to drink. Ve'ailu aleveita de shisha, and they brought him into the house of marble, where surgeries were performed, and a place that is not too much wind. Ve'ka'ulech kreise, in those days they used to do this type of open belly surgery. Havumapkunei dikulei de tarba, so they pull out from his belly a lot of fat. They use here a language of exaggeration. They said basket and basket of fat. So the idea is that he was a very heavy set person. Umotvei b'shimsha betamuz ve'av, they put this fat in the sun in those hot summer, which is the month of Tammuz and Av. to check if that basically caused the hatla'a, velo masrechei, and it's not carry any bad odor. So in this matter, Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, received proof that his decisions were correct and that he was a holy, righteous individual. So the Gemarrah stopped and asked a question, said, Kol tarba name lo sriach. It's not a sufficient proof. So all fat are not attached to flesh does not beautify. Kol tarba lo sriach shuaikei sumakei masriach. So they said that the true that all fat not attached to flesh does not beautify, but the red veins within the fat do beautify. So the Gemara said, "Hacha aval gav deita shuaikei sumakei lo masriach." But here it was an exception, the contrast, that that although there were veins in the fat, they did not beautify, which is a sign of his righteousness. So he followed this pasuk. Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, said the pasuk about himself from the Psalm 16. Af besari yishkon lavedach. David HaMelech said, all my flesh also dwell in safety. So that's basically makes his mind at peace, that he basically did the right thing. But again, it wasn't incomplete, because later on you see in the Gemara in 84b that he still challenged those decisions.
Shula